Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining for another section of Azure Power Lunch. As you always know, this call is being recorded and we place our recordings on our YouTube channel. So if you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop off now. And this call is joined by our Microsoft team members as well as our customers and partners. So with that, we go with the topic of discussion, which is how to access your SQL data from an app service using impersonating the sign-in user. And I know this topic has been there for a while, and I just want to spend a few minutes like why this is important. It came up during the migration of an enterprise application that I'm working on with a customer. So, I know most of the organization are looking at NoSQL databases, and that's the kind of a cool thing these days. But at the same time, there are a number of organizations who have these applications which are using Azure SQL or SQL databases, and they want them to, or they want these applications to modernize these applications. And that's where this kind of a challenge comes in, that how we modernize it, and why and how to secure this data. And by the way, there are different ways of doing it. For example, let's say you have a web application running an app service or a function accessing SQL data. We're talking about Azure SQL here. You can use a connection string, store the connection string in Key Vault, and then access it. That's one way of doing it. It has its pros and cons. For example, now you're using one connection string for everyone, and now you have to have the logic of limiting what data you need to show to the end user at the front end. You know, that's now database is not in control because that's the connection string and they cannot do much. Same thing if you use managed identity as well. That's where, once again, the database is not in control. But with this method, you can leave the control of what data can be sent to the backend, to the SQL database. Because what happens is, based on the user permissions, whatever data that is there will be shown to the end user, and that's it. Okay, and the rest of it will and database will dictate. That's the key thing here. So that's why we want to talk about it. Okay, um, and then some of the key steps, and it's very easy to set up. I mean, there is a detailed article there in the documentation as well. Very easy to set up. For example, what you have to do is you have to enable, and we will go through each step. I just want to outline the steps. So if you are looking at the slide deck, just to kind of mind checklist, you create an app service or a function app. You have to enable Azure AD Auth. This is called Easy Auth. You need to pick Azure AD in there. That's one thing. Second is you have to enable Azure AD Auth for your Azure SQL resource. And just keep in mind that for that resource, you have to enable every other auth. Normally, there is SQL auth and Azure AD Auth. So disable SQL auth, only enable Azure AD Auth. That's a key requirement. Third one is that you need to make sure that your app service principal, which is created as a part of your app using Azure AD Auth, has access to the SQL database, or a kind of a not exactly access to SQL database, but has access to your Azure SQL to request the token. And finally, what you have to do is you will have to get that token. I mean, you have to set the scope for, and we will walk through these steps and get that token and configure it in the code of your app as a part of the, to request the data from the SQL. So that's some of the steps. And once you see that, you will see that, they're kind of very easy to set up. Any questions while we move further? Okay, so let me just do one thing here. I was testing something, so let me just clear some data so we can move our demo a little more interesting. Go in here. Good. Okay, so let's go to our app. So what I have done is I have already created an app just to save time. So this is my resource group. As you can see, there is an app service plan. I have created this app. Okay, this is a web app, and by the way, you don't have to create a certain SKU. You can use a free version, whatever, if you're just testing. The next thing we need to do is go into the authentication and add identity provider, select Microsoft, and don't change anything. Everything that is here, it's okay, and just add. Okay, and it will add a service principal on your behalf. And that's where you have to wait maybe 30, 40 seconds, because if I click on that, I may get an error sometime because it's not created. I mean, it takes some few seconds to create, but as I said, I mean, I was talking, I clicked on it, and the service principal is there. So as you can see, enable authentication, created which creates a service principal behind the scene, and now we need to set up API permission. Okay, and let's click on add permission. Go to API that my organization use, and that's where we need to pick up Azure SQL. Okay, and by the way, um, you, I'm hoping that you have already created an Azure SQL database, and we'll go to that part in a second. Okay, I go in here, click delegated permissions, and make sure, please make sure that you select this one. Okay, and then you do add permission. So what it does is this gives your permission to connect to the Azure SQL database, delegated permission. So basically, think of it, it's a delegated permission. So it will use the delegation of whoever is coming in, the signed in user, on that behalf to connect to. Um, this is not an application permission. As a signed in user, this is very important. Your application will access the SQL API as the signed in user because that's what we want. Okay, and that's it. So that part is done. You have given permission, all thing is set, that is clear. We need to do one more thing here, and for that, we will need to run a small Azure CLI script. So I'm just gonna open Azure CLI right here, and let me show you that script. Let's copy the name of the app from here, and I will show you the script, what I have, and then we can take a look at it together. In the meantime, any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay.
عظيم الدكتور نبيل سفو.
Thank you, Ella. Checking the chat, and let me open Notepad and paste it here so everybody can see it. So this is the, increase the font size a little bit. So okay, so as you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm getting the auth settings for this app, and then I'm adding a new scope in that. And ignore all the other scopes here. The main scope is this one, impersonation. So the thing is, there is one thing to able to connect, but the thing is, I need to present a token. Hey, I have this token, I have this card that I can show you to access. So this is getting that particular token because my app has to send that token um, to the database to get the data. Got it? Because we will see how it is being used in the code to access that data. Okay, so that's that. Um, so that's once you get that token, you add it to the auth setting. There is a way you can do it from the resource graph as well. It's also documented there. You can use that as well. But this to me is simple enough. So basically, you will just take this and run that script. And let's go in here and paste it. Wait, I think something happened. Let me just paste it again. Okay, and that will do the settings and all that. So that part is now taken care of. So your app is now ready. Okay, except one thing, and we will come back to that. Let's go to the SQL piece. Okay, so let me open here, go into the SQL uh, database. Let's go to the server. And this is the setting I was talking about. As you can see here, I am make sure this box is checked. Support only Azure or AD authentication for this server. Okay, this is the key here. If that is not checked, that will not work. So, I mean, your application will not function the way it should. Okay, so that's the key. You create a SQL Server database, Azure SQL database server, and you set this setting. So that should take care of all the things on Azure AD side. Sorry, Azure SQL side. That the last thing is we need to make one code change so that our app can make the call uh, to the Azure SQL database using the appropriate identity. And for that, C# is my favorite language. I have no problem in saying that. And that's why I have the C# code, and uh, you can use your appropriate SDK, and that should work as well. I hope everybody can see it. This is so first you do is you get this header. This has the token, the AAD access token that is there, the JWT token. You take this token and you say, get it, and you attach it to the SQL connection object. Okay, and look at the SQL connection. I, wa- I have no problem showing you my connection string. It just has my server name, my database name, and that's it, nothing else. Because I don't need a connection string. I'm not getting a connection string from any configuration file or anything. The token is my connection string because I am impersonating, I am kind of accessing the database through impersonating the signed in user. So think of this flow. User comes in, signed into the Azure um, app service. Azure app service gets the token because it has set the scope for Azure SQL. So it's get that token which has that information in it. It takes that token, puts that in the connection.access token parameter, and then it tries to open the connection. And when that happens, I'm able to get rows from the, I mean, and this is a simple database. It has one table. I'm just getting a row count from that. Okay, that's all I'm doing. And this there's a parse token which does nothing. It just gets the name of the user from the token and just prints out the entire token. Okay, that's all there is to it. And let's say you are using some other language like Node.js or um, Java. I mean, you just have to set up the way to in the appropriate SDK to set that access token. That's all there is to it. And the rest of the stuff will be done through the underlying infrastructure. We'll take care of it. Okay, any questions? Okay, so let's move on to the um, demo. So what I have done is, let me just close this thing. And what I'm going to do is I am going to open a anonymous browser. And now I'm going to, so the thing is there, I have already set up, just to save time, I've already set up another app. And let me just go to that particular application, get that, and I'm going to paste it here. So this is the website URL. And it's going to ask me, since an anonymous browser is going to ask me to authenticate. So I picked up this username, which already have access. Okay, I go sign in. It asks for my identity. Let me just get the token. Give me 1 second. Ooh, I provided that. Ooh, that's not the right website that I needed access. I think that's not going to work. Let me just close it one more time. Sorry, guys. Wrong website. Let me get the right one. It did not copy the right link, so sorry. Let me go back there again. You know, live demos have their pros and cons. So yeah, I got it. It's 151.537. It's not going to the right site, but let's click on it. Let's do it anyways. Okay, so I think I broke something while I was testing. So, okay. So in any case, there is a live site that is running right now. And as you can see here, when I run it, I get like the number of persons and and let's analyze this token. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this token and analyze it here. So let's go in here, paste it here, and let's decode the token, refresh it, sorry. Okay, as you can see here, this is what you need to see in the audience. If your token doesn't have it in the audience, either this is not the right token or you did not set something up. Okay, it has to be the access token, and this audience should be database.windows.net. So that's very important. Second part is it should have your user information, like scope is user impersonation, your unique name, your UPN, all that information should be here. So what I have found out with one of the enterprises I'm working with, they were doing everything right, except in the end, in the code, in here, instead of setting this access token, they were actually doing the default credential. If you are using default credential, what it's going to do is it's going to use the managed identity of the app to connect. And they were kind of confused, like, okay, why it's not connecting? We have done everything that was in that document. That's the thing. You cannot do default credential here. Um, you have to use basically um, the you have to use basically the MS token, and you have to set that access token and get that from there. Otherwise, this thing will not work. Okay, so that's that. Um, any questions? Why? Let's. So that's that. I mean, that's and as you can see here, that's the only thing you need to check. And let's investigate why we were getting this error. So let me just go into my um, app and let's see what did I kind of okay, authentication. Why this thing is okay, so this is my app and let's go into that authentication. Yeah, that's the right one. Okay, let's browse it one more time. Yeah, so it's working as you can see here. Okay, so you can get the data here right now. Let me just try it one more time from here. Why we okay, yeah, that's not sure why this is not working from the anonymous browser and working from here. But normally you need to check from the anonymous browser. Okay, now when you need to troubleshoot these kind of issues, one main thing is I have a small sample code that I would suggest. I mean, with that code, what you can do is you can just take the token out and paste it in this code and run it. Because what that will do is that will isolate your app service, everything out. Okay. And this will make sure that you, with your access token, you're able to connect. So let me just run this console app and and what we're going to do is we have a token here in this one, and we are going to use this token and use it in this app. So what I'm now doing is I'm using the token that I got from this app and using in this console app. So let's run it. This will give you a way to validate if the token that you got. So let's say if you're getting an error, you will take that token out and somehow from the log trace or anything and kind of use this code, whatever language that you prefer, and then try to um, see if you can access it. Since you can access it, if you cannot access it, then basically what you will have to do is you will have to see what error you get and then go about. Normally, the main cause of the issue is that either you haven't set the appropriate scope. Remember, the code that we have here, you did not either do this step or you did not assign access to the user to the database. So remember, if there's another AD user, you have to add that user into the database. So for example, let's say that there's another user that you want to add. You have to add that user using something like this. And let me show it to you here. We are in, yeah. So basically something like this, where you go in and you say, create this user from external provider and give them appropriate access. Okay. So my point is, if the user doesn't have access, you will get this get error, or if you haven't set up end-to-end some step in impersonation. So looking at the token will help you that. And as I said before, the token has to have this audience database.windows.net in the audience. If it doesn't have that in the audience, then there is something wrong. So these are some of the practical steps that you can take, because since that website has authentication enabled, that may present some challenges for you, but you can run it locally, through some simple code and try to isolate the problem. Okay. Any questions, folks? Okay. So with that, if there are no questions, I just want to do a quick recap. So this is basically in today's session, we talked about how you can set up Azure SQL. Uh, you can call Azure SQL databases from app service using the signed in users ID through impersonation, and basically leave it to the database how to manage access, kind of the access requirements and everything, and leave that baggage to the database. Let it direct how what user have what access, and let your app just present the data to the end user. That's all it has to do. So basically, that what I was trying to share. Sorry for the little snafu in the demo. I think I kind of had some issue with the registration, but that's, I think the main thing I want to show you how simple it is to set up, and at the same time how you can kind of get this going to make your application more secure and more enterprise friendly and modernizing. Any questions, folks? Okay, if there are no questions, I will give everybody their 2 minutes back and hope to see everybody next week and for another section of Azure Power Lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveed. Very useful session.